Hi, my name is Kaylee, and I'm going to be discussing today the four major myofascial lines along the body. These include the superficial back line, the superficial front line, the spiral line, as well as the lateral line. I will be demonstrating these lines by showing how to pop up on a surfboard. I will first explain what each line is all about and what their postural and movement functions are, and then show you a video of a surfer popping up onto his board. I will then explain each line and how they come together to show you just how amazing the body is. First, we'll start with the superficial back line. The superficial back line connects and protects the entire posterior surface of the body. It starts on the bottom of the foot and goes all the way to the top of the head in two sections. One from the toes to the knees and two from the knees to the brow. The muscles involved in this line include the erector spinae, the hamstrings, and the gastrocnemius. The postural function of the superficial back line is to support the body in full upright extension. It contains mostly slow twitch endurance fibers. The movement function of the superficial back line is mainly extension and hyperextension, with the exception of toe and knee flexion. Next, we will move to the superficial front line. This line connects the entire anterior surface of the body from the top of the foot to the side of the skull in two sections, toes to pelvis and pelvis to head. When standing, it becomes one continuous line of integrated myofascia. The muscles involved in this line include the sternocleidomastoid, the rectus abdominis, rectus femoris, the quadriceps, as well as your tibialis anterior. The postural function of the superficial front line is to balance the superficial back line and to provide tensile support from the top. It also maintains postural extension of the knees and extension of the toes. The movement function includes flexion of the trunk and hips, as well as extension at the knee and dorsiflexion at the foot. The third line we will look at is the lateral line. This line occurs on each side of the body from the medial and lateral midpoint of the foot around the outside of the ankle and up the lateral aspect of the leg and thigh. It passes up the trunk in a shoelace pattern under the shoulder to the skull near the ear. The muscles involved in this line include the splenius capitis, sternocleidomastoid, external and internal intercostals, lateral abdominal obliques, gluteus maximus, the tensor fascial latae, the iliotibial tract, the abductor muscles, and the peroneal or fibularis muscles. The postural function of the lateral line is to balance the front and back bilaterally to balance the left and right sides. This line also fixes the trunk and legs in a coordinated manner to prevent buckling of the structure during any activity with the arms. The movement function of the lateral line is to help create a lateral bend in the body, including lateral flexion of the trunk and abduction of the hips, as well as eversion of the foot. It also assists in helping brake for lateral and rotational movements of the trunk. The last line we'll be looking at is the spiral line. This line loops around the body in a double helix and joins each side of the skull across the upper back. The muscles involved in this line include the major and minor rhomboids, serratus anterior, external and internal obliques, tensor fascial latae, iliotibial band, tibialis anterior, and your peroneus or fibularis longus, as well as the bicep femoris. The postural function of the spiral line wraps the body in a double spiral that helps maintain balance across all planes and aids in knee tracking. The movement function of the spiral line is to mediate spirals and rotations in the body and in eccentric and isometric contractions to steady the trunk and leg to help keep them from folding into rotational collapse. First, you will see the superficial back line at work, keeping the body in full extension while waiting for a wave. To keep balanced, you will also need to access your spiral line to aid in balancing the body, as well as your lateral line, which balances your body from front and back, as well as left and right. When the surfer starts to paddle, you'll notice a slight rotational movement throughout the trunk. This is also brought to you by the spiral line. While using the spiral line when paddling, this also uses your lateral line, due to the fact it functions as an adjustable brake for lateral and rotational movement of the trunk. This prevents the surfer from injuring themselves. Once the wave is rightfully theirs, it's time to hang 10. The surfer begins to stabilize himself by putting both arms under their chest and keeps his hands flat on the board. He then lifts up his chest into spinal extension. This movement uses the superficial back line and stretches the superficial front line. Once the surfer is ready to catch this wave, he will first check and see if there are any other surfers going to catch this wave. Looking around uses the splenius capitis, which is the start of the spiral line. When the surfer feels like he has balance, he then begins the pop-up with one quick fluid movement, starting with flexion at the hip and one knee, while the other knee is still in extension. This only happens for a brief moment though, until the front foot is secure in plantar flexion facing outward, which means the hip is externally rotated. The back knee goes into flexion quickly, so both knees are now in flexion, and the back foot is in neutral position. Because the surfer's hips and trunk are flexed, this means that the trunk's superficial back line will be stretched, which means he is using his superficial front line. He will slowly bring his trunk up, using his superficial back line to extend the spine, as well as his spiral line and lateral line to provide balance as he conquers these crashing waves. He will want to stay in a position of trunk, hip, and knee flexion to ensure his center of gravity is lower to the board. This allows for greater stability on the board and a greater ease in controlling the board to do what he wants it to do. So here's a video of a surfer popping up. So what he's going to start doing is paddling here. He's going to get up and use his splenius capitis to look around. He then is going to balance himself on the board. He's going to start paddling, and here is the pop-up. Boom, one quick motion using all four lines. And he's just right now demonstrating how you want to keep yourself centered on the board to maintain your center of gravity so your balance is better.